At the end of this conversation, we will work together to try to create a product, whether it's a legislative product, whether it's a series of letters to do as follow-up, to try to figure out where we're going to follow up from here on the ideas, both from what you've submitted written and orally. So I do want you to continue to think about that, some of the work product at the end of this. Mr. Blair, let me ask you a question that you had brought up as well, and that is the issue of the transition. Every time there's a presidential transition, regardless of party, there's a shift and a relook again. So I'd be interested in an open conversation about what things can we do as a committee to help the next president prepare for that transition, and things that we can put in place and say these issues need to be addressed when that transition occurs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what Senator Ernst just raised was very important, this program implementation, because we've seen failures of program implementation across government for many years now. And that's one of the focuses of the Academy's transition work. Last week, we launched our Transition 2016 initiative. And what our focus is going to be on program implementation to make sure that the incoming administration has before it the information it needs to evaluate how programs are being implemented, what's working, what's not working. And so they don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater by saying the past administration was bad, we're good, we don't have anything to do with it, and we want to start again from scratch. And so I think program implementation is extraordinarily important. I think that for the transition, civil service reform, while I don't know if there could be broad bipartisan agreement based upon the past decade of experience, but I think there can be some tenets to look at. And I wouldn't recommend that we go forward with a baked cake for a new administration, but you can certainly tee up the issues to make it part of their management agenda to determine how do we want to step forward with these kinds of reforms. This subcommittee is poised and primed to do that.
Right. Well, that's what we're trying to gather at this point, our ideas. We have our own. We're trying to gather other insight from other individuals as well. Any other ideas that can come out? Obviously, there's some in your written testimony as well. Others that want to contribute to basic ideas of if we're going to look at serious things to be able to transition in a couple of years, things that need to be addressed when that transition comes.
Sir, I would think trying to go back, the Federal Employee Comparability Pay Act that goes back many, many years that said that we would pay federal employees in comparison to what the private sector is being paid. It's never been implemented. Each year, the President, Congress, someone preempts the process that I think trying to get federal employees paid in accordance with the private sector with the similar work that they're doing would be very, very important.
Okay. Other ideas? Let me transition to another thing, then we'll come back to it. I want to talk a little bit about what Senator Heidkamp was talking about, that is recruiting. Does everyone know the cost of recruiting right now? The private sector can look at it and say if they're going to try to recruit someone new to their company, they have a basic cost of what that is. Do we have a good guesstimate of a cost of recruiting a new federal employee? Haven't seen that? Okay. Let me, we'll do some chasing, see if we can determine that and see not only retention, but costs and how that works. Ms. Jones, you made a comment and through your study, as you looked at the Employee Engagement Index that you created, which you also referenced in both your written and your oral testimony on it, 13 to 47 different agencies had declining employee engagement index scores. 3 of 47 had an increase, 31 of 47 were flat. Now, what I'm interested in is, can we get a list of those different agencies so we can begin to compare? You had mentioned the big three there in the decline. 3 of the 13 that had a decline are Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and Veterans. Can you determine the why on those? They had obviously it's a large number of employees, but also had a significant decline, but some of the 10 other entities.
In terms of a list of the entities, actually what we were doing was reporting evidence from OPM's Employee Engagement Index. So yes, giving you the names of all the agencies is certainly feasible. What we know about what increases employee engagement based on the index is the relationship that the employee has with his or her supervisor, the extent to which the employee feels that the work that they're doing is important and they can connect it with the mission of the agency, the extent to which they feel that they're getting training and developmental opportunities. whether they feel they have an adequate work-life balance, whether there is an inclusive environment in the agencies. All of those things contribute to an employee feeling engaged. I could supply you later with more detail about the three large agencies and what the particular factors may
Okay,
have
so
been.
let me do that. Let's just open this up for open conversation. I'll go ahead and transition this into our second round here, and all of us can participate just at any point. But let me add to that. Why? For Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and veterans, what is your perception as GAO looks at this and the scoring that came in from OPM? Is there any single factor? I mean, you mentioned that, but what is happening there that's not happening in other places that in Homeland Security, Defense, and VA, they're having issues with supervision, they're having issues with engagement? What's driving that?
Okay, I would have to provide you later more detailed information on those particular agencies. The Employee Engagement Index aggregates information across 15 different questions, so would have to look at the disaggregation and provide you with that detail if you don't mind.
Yeah, that would be helpful to us as we get a chance to look at the workforce, because obviously we want to look at why there's a decline in one area, and for the three that had the increase, do you happen to recall the three that had the increasing score, who they were? I didn't see it in your report.
The Department of Education was one.
Okay.
Yes, I don't recall the other two at the moment.
Well, that would be helpful to us to get, I guess, both extremes there. The 13 that had the decline, the three that had the increase on it, and try to figure out what's happening in each of these agencies that can be information shared.
Okay.
And I understand not every agency is the same and their structure is the same, nor are we trying to make them all the same. It'd be like trying to make all 50 states the same. They're not. But there are some things that we can learn from one and be able to share with the other, and that'd be helpful to us.
Certainly, we can provide you with that.
Okay.
I want to